Thank you for joining another episode of the WealthRabbit podcast. I'm Charles.
And I'm Jason.
And thank you for joining.
Hello, Bad Bunnies. We're glad you're here.
We're so glad you're all here.
I forgot this is live on TV, too.
It's live on TV. Hey, everybody, we're streaming live.
Do you watch I Think You Should Leave?
Yeah.
Do you think this is going to be on live on Corn Cob TV? Right after Coffin Flop? My wife will like that. She'll never watch this and never get that, but she'll like that.
All right. So today we're going to talk about how much you should be saving for retirement, for different ages, different income levels, things like that. So let's talk about that concept in general. I think people are always looking for, like, what's the number? What's the percent?
The number?
What should we be thinking of? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I think back in the day, people used to think, like, I don't know, do we need $1 million for retirement? What do you think you need? Like, and it's going to be dependent on every individual situation. I mean, for some people, maybe less, maybe more, different situations. But so let's start with the questions that you would need to be coming up with to build what you refer to as like a goal-based retirement strategy.
Yeah. So you got to figure out basically what your goals are.
Yep.
So goals are meaning when you want to retire.
Yep.
What you want to do in retirement, how much money you want to spend in today's dollars. Like, the software will calculate that. But let's just say, hey, you want to spend, right now you're spending $2,000 a month, and you think you can live off that, then we can do our calculations based off that. So it's figuring out, and you might want more, or you might want to go on trips, or you might, you might have plans.
Right.
So, you figure out what your goals are, and then you back into the numbers that way.
Yeah. So that's a way of determining kind of.
Yeah, I would say in general,
goals.
like if you're like, hey, well, what percentage I should save, like for retirement, I would say, at least 10%, 10 to 20% is probably close to the right.
It's kind of a good ballpark
number of what you're making now. Now that's a very generic term, because if you're 55 and you're about to retire and you're making $50,000 a year and you have no retirement savings, it's like, well, you're going to need to.
10%.
That's not going to work. How is that going to work?
Yeah.
So that's why it's best to start as early as you can, putting in as much as you can.
Right. So in some ways, you'd say 10 to 20%, depending on situations.
Like if you're just looking for a number, if you're like 22, you're like, hey, how much should I put away?
Right.
Like, I would do as much as you can, but 10, 20% is good.
And how should people be? We haven't talked at all about Social Security. The idea that I'll get Social Security at some point. So like, what's your general?
Yeah, we
advice
normally
to
say
people?
Social Security can cover 25%.
Right. Okay.
So whatever you're getting Social Security, that's going to cover 25% of your cost of living, and then you're going to need to come up with that 75% difference.
Gotcha. If it's doing great, then that's just a nice advantage, but you don't want to plan for that. You don't want to plan.
Yeah, I mean, most people live off Social Security, but like that's difficult. If you're making Social Security is giving you $1,200 a month or $1,500 a month, like the max Social Security you can get, I think, is $4,500 or $5,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
But that's if you deferred the max, which is the max Social Security this year is $168,000 something. So you had to be making $168,000 to defer the max.
Right.
For 30 years.
Yeah.
So most people are getting, $1,000 to $2,000 a month. That's $24,000 a year. Like, that's hard to live off of.
That's a hard living. Yeah. So try to plan for. Yeah. To avoid that you don't need Social Security.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably like into savings.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
Right.
So, I mean, the more you can put away, the better.
You said 10 to 20%.
The first thing, you also need an emergency fund. So if something goes bad, you have to have a medical procedure. Your car breaks down. Your house, you need a new HVAC. Like, you need money for that. So that needs to be liquid cash.
Right.
Or like invested very conservatively. So
what do you typically recommend for that? 3 months, or you say?
Yeah.
3 to 6
6 months of
expense.
in cash.
Yeah.
And then anything above that should be in a brokerage account or a retirement account.
So 3 to 6 months of living expenses and emergency fund. That's what you do first. Any other advice to people who are looking at getting started in investing? Do they wait until certain things are taken care of, or certain, like, at what point do you recommend? I mean, obviously, the earlier the better, as early as possible.
You need to make sure if your employer is offering you free money, you need
Right.
to take that no matter what.
Right.
Like, so if they're giving you a 3% match, meaning they're going to give you 3% if you do 3%. Like, you take that. That's free money.
Yeah.
So if you're making $50,000, that's $1,500 a year that your employer is giving you for free.
Yeah.
And so you need to do that. So that's one. Like, I would do that. Then I would have my emergency fund. And it's different for different people. Like, if you're straight out of college living in an apartment, like, you don't need as much of an emergency fund as if you have 2 kids and a house and 3 cars.
That's going to look
and all
different
that
for
stuff.
everybody. Yeah.
So you just have to,
For that emergency fund, would you say that you would calculate that as kind of like, what is your, like, bare level of existence?
yeah, it's
like,
more
I mean,
3
you
to
would-
6 months of expenses.
Right. If something horrible happens, you're probably not going to be living exactly the same way you are, in a good situation.
That's
So, I mean,
Yeah.
3 to 6 months of normal spending versus crisis
Yep.
spending. I don't know.
That's why we say 3 to 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah. And so anything above that needs to be invested, you would say.
Yeah.
In
So
it.
the emergency fund is in conservative stuff because you might need the money.
Right.
Now, conservative, like,
Conservative
I would put
meaning
that in a
High yield
cash,
savings?
high yield savings. Like, right now, you're getting between 4 and 5% in that. Like, if
Right.
you're not making that, then you don't have it in the right account. So I would have that, and then whatever you can save above that needs to go in a combination of the retirement plan and your brokerage account. I would say that you want to put as much into the retirement plan first, most likely, especially in a Roth, because let's just say you can max out $16,500 in a simple IRA, and you have $15,000 you can put in. If you put that $15,000 in the Roth, it grows tax free. You never have to pay tax on it. You take the money out, it's tax free.
Yeah.
There's also, we talked about penalties, but there's only penalties on the earnings. So, like, your basis, if you put in the $15,000, there's no penalty. You normally have to wait 5 years. There's a couple other things, but
Gotcha.
so you that $15,000, like, you're better off putting there than in a brokerage account where you're having to pay tax on the earnings.
On the earnings. Let's talk about the differences there between like an individual brokerage account versus a retirement account. So you're tax advantaged in that sense that you're not paying any. There's no taxes on unrealized gains, but with a brokerage account, you are occasionally you're getting.
So on a
taxed
brokerage account, you're taxed when there's dividends, interest, or capital gains. So when you sell stock, you pay tax. Could be a loss, but when there's dividends, you pay tax on the dividends. When there's interest generated, capital gain distribution, so you're paying tax on that.
Gotcha.
If it's in a retirement account, you're not paying tax on anything until you take the money out. If it's traditional, or you're never paying tax if it's a Roth, assuming you wait until 59 and a half. So that's why a Roth is such a good vehicle.
Yeah.
Because it's tax free.
Yeah.
And it grows tax free.
Do you ever getting into advising a certain level of savings to shoot for, kind of giving people that kind of goal, like say that, like, well, by the age of so and so, then you should try to have
and that's
when you say double your salary or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
Something like
I mean,
that.
if you're gonna retire, you need to have a certain amount of money. That's a goal. Like, I'm just throwing out a number, but you need $3 million to retire the way you want to retire at age 67. So we figured that out. Now, how are we gonna get there?
Right.
It's like, you got to be putting away this amount per year.
Right. And to get there, so I mean, so people can be kind of following along and tracking it. Can it give people like
there's software that literally you can track it and see if you're on your goals every day. I wouldn't suggest you do that, but I mean we have the technology and the math.
It's good to have the
check that.
Have the benchmarks, but ideally don't be looking at it every day.
Yeah,
it's probably easier to do that in prior generations. When you at least in a prior decade, when you didn't have the sort of daily,
you would just get your statement.
Updates.
You would just get your statement once a quarter or whatever.
Like, oh, doing well.
Now you can log in.
Well. Yeah.
In WealthRabbit, we show you right in there like how much money you've made, or lost.
Yeah.
Hopefully we've made you money. But yeah, we have it right there.
Right.
So when you log in, you can see your rate of return.
Right. It's kind of like, it's helpful, but it's also like you don't want to be like checking it every single day in a certain sense.
Yeah,
right?
you can't. You don't want to time the market.
Right.
Because if you try to time the market, you're not going to succeed.
Right. You just want to set
Most
it.
likely.
Set it
You might get
forget it,
lucky,
kinda.
but yes.
Yeah. For most of the time.
Yes. You want to ask are the stuff you're in, is it good quality stuff?
Right.
If it is, then you want to hold.
Is there a time period that you would say people should reassess what they currently have their funds in? Would they reassess it every year, every couple of years, every?
It depends. It depends if there's a big life-changing event.
Yeah.
You know, let's say you get lucky and you inherit $4 million.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then
Happens
you
to
might
me
not.
all the time.
It happened to you twice this week.
Yeah, I
Weird.
mean, geez.
You just you date these women and you get on their life insurance policies and they die. It's weird.
Yeah, it's my part-time gig.
But yeah, so if you have that, then you might want to change to a more conservative investment in your other stuff. So it depends if there's a life event. But in general, like the risk tolerance doesn't always change. So
Right.
I wouldn't say you need to. You
wouldn't be reallocating at any regular interval. It's just I didn't know if
I would say like once a year it's a good to assess and make sure you still feel that way. But in general, like unless there's a big change, like, and part of like our job at WealthRabbit is we're reallocating that fund based on the risk tolerance.
Right.
So if the cash gets too high, if the stocks get too high, blah blah, we're selling and we're keeping it. So based on our risk tolerance, what we want. So if we want 60% stock, 40% bonds, and the stocks are doing super well, like we'll you might get to a point where we've got 70% there, and we'll sell that off for you and reallocate.
Interesting. Okay.
You don't have to worry about that. That's the beauty of it.
Sounds good. So yeah, talk a little bit more about the WealthRabbit aspect of it. So it seems like an ideal situation is you come in, you figure out risk tolerances, you set it, figure out what you can afford to put in there, go with that, and then you're set. Really, you just let it ride. Regularly. Yeah.
I mean, WealthRabbit's going to do everything for you. Your thing is, how much am I going to put into it? How much am I going to put into my Simple?
Right.
And that's something that you have to figure out based off of your goals. Yeah. But I would say the higher the better.
Right.
You got to do at least the match that your employer's doing, but put in as much as you can.
How close to 20% can you get?
Yeah. And that was the 10 to 20% is a general, but like that's not, you can always save more.
Right.
Saving more is always good. And you're going to have goals like you want to buy a house, you want to do other stuff. Like some of that shouldn't be in retirement.
Right.
Because you need money.
You don't want to put anything in there that you need at any point in the near future.
Yeah. So the savings doesn't necessarily, that 20% doesn't necessarily mean it all needs to go into the retirement plan. It could go into the brokerage account.
Gotcha.
And it depends on when you want to buy that house. If you don't want to buy a house for 10 years, then you can be more aggressive. If you want to buy a house in a year, you don't want to invest that in super aggressive stuff because if it goes down, that doesn't make sense. So that's stuff you got to think about.
Yeah. The more risky, the more volatile, the more.
I'm a risk. I believe in the market.
Yeah.
Like I'd be 100%. That's me.
Yeah.
I'm super risky, meaning like I trust the market. There'll be down years, but there'll be up years.
Right.
In general, the up years are better. I'll do good.
Right.
But there's people who don't like that.
Yeah.
Get that. They're less risky.
Yeah.
We've got portfolios for you.
Right.
And they're all named after rabbits, which is exciting. We don't have one called Bad Bunny, though.
We don't have a Bad Bunny plan yet?
They're named after actual.
Is that going to be like 100% risk of the Bad Bunny?
We're gonna add a Bitcoin fund pretty soon, because a lot of people are into crypto. So you'll be able to have a fund that, if you believe
specifically
in that,
tracks Bitcoin, or are you talking like Bitcoin
it's different. I haven't quite figured all that out because now that crypto can be in ETFs, like we can offer that through Simple. So it'll be different ETFs that'll try different coins.
Cool.
But that's not ready yet. So
these are traditional retirement vehicles. You're not
correct.
Not investing in cryptocurrency directly.
You're in a fund that's invested in it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
So you don't have to do any of the crazy reporting and all that stuff, and you don't have to worry about someone stealing your wallet.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's what
exactly
I'm trying to get at. Yeah. You're not running a crypto wallet or something.
Yeah. But allows you to be invested in that.
That allows you to be exposed to
and
that
I have
space.
a lot of clients who are like, I don't want to do retirement, but I put all my money in Bitcoin. Well,
Right.
this is a way where you can do both.
Right. Thanks, Jason. This has been a fantastic.
Bye, Bad Bunnies. See you
Bad
next
Bunnies.
week.
Thank you. Yeah, please send in your questions. If you have any questions, send them in to support@wealthrabbit.com, and we'll check them out and read them on air. Thank you.
The WealthRabbit podcast is a production of WealthRabbit, located in sunny Rock Hill, South Carolina. WealthRabbit is the first digitized platform designed to make simple IRA management effortless. We're on a mission to empower small businesses to invest in their team's financial future without the headaches. No hidden fees, no complicated processes, just retirement planning made simple. Go to wealthrabbit.com now to learn more. The views and opinions expressed on the WealthRabbit podcast are those of the guests and do not necessarily reflect or state the opinions of WealthRabbit. Comments and remarks on this podcast should not be construed as tax, legal, or other investment advice. Please consult your tax, legal, or investment professional. All investments involve risk. Past performance does not guarantee future results, including the risk of loss. Investments are not FDIC insured.